Good evening and welcome to another edition of Hoosier Tailgate Live here on thehoosier.com, a part of the On3 family. We appreciate you joining us here this evening as we finally got past all the storms and tornadoes that have been going on over the last couple days throughout the state of Indiana, and we appreciate your joining us. If you're from an area that was hit hard, our thoughts are with you, as many have cleaned up even last week from some major storms in and around the Indiana area. But appreciate you come joining us tonight. If you get a chance, hit that subscribe button there and hit the notification bell. Let you know every time that we come on YouTube live, and we appreciate that as well. And in the description, or you can go to my link page or Linktree page that's found off of my Hoosier Tailgate Twitter account or X account, a linkage there for everything at the Fanatic storefront, including the Game Day Essentials package that's there to look at. And if you like something, by all means, we appreciate you even buying something from that store, as anything that we get from a commission standpoint goes back into the show overall. Well, enough of that, and get into tonight's talk here in a second, but wanted to talk a little bit about, kind of what we're going to do here tonight. With this segment, a two-part segment here, as we kind of finish up the month of June and really kind of the quote-unquote season 3. As we get back to July, we'll be approaching our season 4, starting the new season for the Indiana Hoosiers. But the really wanted to talk about tonight, not about offense or anything of that nature, but talk about this Indiana defense led by Bryant Haines and a really good defensive staff. And they have been really good over the last couple seasons, and even going back to their time at JMU, outstanding. We're going to talk about what I believe makes them outstanding as a defensive unit, all 11 bodies on the field. And then in part 2 of this series, we're going to talk about it from the flip side. If I was the offensive coordinator going up against Indiana, how would I try to attack Indiana's defense? And let me say, there's a lot of discussion about that right now throughout all the staff rooms throughout the Big Ten, because I guarantee you Indiana's defense has been one that's been studied quite a bit by offensive staffs, because nobody moved the ball very effectively against Indiana last season and really the year before. Remember tonight, if you got any questions, by all means, we want you to fully participate. Drop those into the live chat there if you can, and try to get as many of those answered as we go along tonight, and get ourselves situated with this topic of the Bryant Haines effect when it comes to Indiana's defense. But again, you talk about a season that was ended in a national championship, Big Ten championship, and as everyone would say, when you win championships, defenses are a big part of why teams win championships, and that was certainly the case at Indiana. And we'll talk more about that in a second. We'll talk about some things here getting kicked off tonight in and around college football, some recruiting aspects of things, and talk a little bit about some of this stuff here. Brendan Sorsby, quarterback at Texas Tech, formerly of Indiana, has finally decided to give up, and Texas Tech have had a breakup. He is going to go enter the supplemental draft in hopes that an NFL team will pick him up. That all came to I guess you could say, an end yesterday evening, after a flurry of, I guess what you would say, lawsuits were presented, especially by the Big 12 and other state attorney generals throughout the country, especially those in the Big 12 conference that represents in those states, had filed essentially a complaint that was going to put Texas Tech in a really bad position. And ultimately, the decision was made to kind of cut ties and let Brendan move on and see if he can get himself in the NFL, which I think is a possible course of action for him. I got a feeling that some NFL teams will be a little concerned, but if he's going through the treatment aspect of things and he's doing the right things, then I don't see why they wouldn't put him in a situation in the NFL where he can still get the help that he needs. But that came to full fruition last night. This is what we've become. We've become, instead of having an NCAA that rules on things, we've now become the governing body of college athletic sports is the courts and AGs around the country. It's a sad thing to think about that the one governing body who has governed the sport of football for a number of decades has been essentially, cut off from making these type of decisions because everything ultimately ends in a lawsuit in the court of law. So that came, like I said, last night came to fruition, and they decided to separate ways. And again, Coach Signetti was on Rich Eisen's show the other day. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, I encourage you to go. It was a good interview. He spoke highly of Sorsby, and he was at Indiana for for a few, maybe a week or so after Sig got announced as the head coach before he transferred to Cincinnati. And Signetti, even in a short period of time that he got a chance to know the young man, spoke highly of him, which I think says a lot. And while you don't want to see any kid fail or, succumb to something like this in terms of not getting it corrected, Sorsby would be definitely one of those guys that would, in my opinion, is not a quote unquote bad dude or a bad kid or anything of that nature. He made some poor decisions and it ultimately caught up to him, and he's paying a price for that at this moment. And hopefully he can get himself on the right track. Supposedly, Texas Tech is not demanding that he pay anything back to them. So whatever he was given in terms of money, whether that was the total $5 million package up front, which I doubt, but whatever he was given to the certain degree that there was probably some money exchanged hands, they're not going to ask for it back. So that in itself is very generous by the Texas Tech faithful. So we can move on from that as that's been settled now and no more issues with that. The other thing is Hoosier recruiting. Again, staying on task. They picked up Chris Bradley, a cornerback out of Cincinnati, Ohio, out of North College Hill. 3-star kid, about 5'11", 160, good, decent speed. He's also a return man. Again, a guy that I think can do the job covering. He's pretty good in that respect. And again, another kid is about 5'11", 6 foot. They're getting taller and taller. But there's another pickup for Sig and the crew right now sitting at 12 commitments. Of course, we're waiting for some big names to come across the ticker tape, as it per se, for the commitments of hopefully Moshawn Sales and another young man, linebacker, whose name is escaping me right this moment, but there are 2 4-stars out there that have Indiana and have even been given nods by the experts that Indiana's in the driver's seat for both of them. And that would be 2 huge gets. Getting one of the 2 would be huge by the names that they're going up against. So I got a feeling we're going to have a lot of news here in the next couple weeks as we come to June's end, because after that you get into the month of July, which is the dead period, and recruiting for the most part is over at that point. The other thing that came out of news out of today was that the Protect Sports Act was passed out of committee. That's where they go through it, maybe make some markups and send it on its legislative pass in the Senate. I don't know if there has been a motion to put it on the floor yet. I think there may be some other things they have to do before that, but it passed one of its hurdles of getting out of committee. And remember now, this is the Protect Sports Act that both the Big Ten and SEC are not for, and they are totally against. So who knows what will ultimately end up happening with that legislation. But again, we've said in the past, at least it's something. Can they improve upon it, make it better? Things like that, we'll see. And you got to go through the process, and that's never something that's easily said and done in our country today, because everybody wants it now, and it does take a time or two to get through it all in that respect. So again, some good updates there with the recruiting, and like I said, in end of June here, we should be facing a pretty good number of guys making a commitment and getting some names off the board. And hopefully Indiana strikes on a couple of these guys. And if they do, I think this recruiting class is shaping up to be another strong one for Coach Signetti and crew in that respect. Seeing and to see, got a new, John says that Caleb Johnson committed to Michigan. Wow, Michigan State. That kind of came out of left field. That had been a Iowa, Indiana deal. This is, I think, the old lineman up around in Noblesville. That's a tough one to lose in the sense that he's right out your back door. That, like I said, that one, I don't think Michigan State was even on the radar at one point in time. So big pickup for Fitzgerald. I'm sure they're doing quite well in his first year up there, but tough one to lose in that respect for Indiana, because he was a pretty good offensive lineman to add to this group, and he'd have been great to have along with the McDermott kid, also from Noblesville. But if he's made his decision, he's made his decision. But we also know that that doesn't mean people will not stop recruiting, because they continue to do those things in that respect. Well, tonight, like I said, we're going to take a look at this Indiana defense and talk a little bit about what we think is important, or how I think they have gotten to themselves to be such an elite defense. And the last 2 years, they've been gangbusters on a lot of fronts when you think about it. But again, when you look at the numbers of the situation, it's pretty simple to see that Indiana, for the most part, has really dominated in the statistical analysis of it. 11.7 points a game, about 257 yards of total defense, 77 yards of rushing defense, which they were one of the tops in the country again. But the big one there is 30 turnovers. 30 turnovers was huge for this defense a year ago. And I think Indiana ended up, I think it was a plus 18 or maybe a little bit more on the turnover margin. But again, a huge number for this defense, as they racked up key turnovers throughout the year, and an offense that was able to turn those into points, which is another statistic that we'll look at another time. But again, you can see why this defense has been so dominant over the last couple seasons. And it really starts with the run game. They are able to really shut down an opponent's rushing attack. And a lot of times everybody thinks it's scheme or what they're doing with their scheme. And the reality of it is, it really is none of that. There's a lot of things that I think they do quite well with this squad. And, we'll talk about it here in a second when we throw on the tape. But the biggest thing is stopping the run has been the key component that has enabled Indiana to have this success on defense, being able to get offenses behind schedule and put them in long yardage situations. And then Indiana faced a multitude of third and long situations as a defense, and those odds are in their favor. And they were able to get off the field. And that is a huge reason why they were as good as they were on defense. Everything kind of flowed from stopping the run every pressure that they were due, how they disguised their coverage that led to these third down situations, that led to turnover opportunities. It all started with the basic concept is get teams off a schedule and put them in peril as in early downs. And Indiana did that as good as anybody in the country. And I think a lot of it goes to what Indiana likes to do and how they do it. But we're going to look at some video here of a couple plays that we got here. Let's see, get over to the video room that is sponsored by Quick Cut Software. They're very good in what they do. We're going to take a look at a couple things here with this defense because I think the biggest thing is you got to be able to show it, I guess, into respect. Let's see, it's not playing up there, is it? Let's see if we can get that fixed. Let's refresh the page. Okay. Technology. There we go. Yeah, I think we're going to look at this from the standpoint of their base defense. Indiana played a lot of four down lineman type of deals this year, and I wanted to get to one of them here so that we can take a look at it. But one thing that Indiana does as good as anybody in their structure of things, and I'm going to get to the end zone shot of this so it can be seen better, is what we call their alignments in terms of gap control. Everything with the defense is about the gaps and covering down. Indiana does as good as anybody when it comes to that respect. I mean, the basics of it is you got a guy that's has a 3 technique. He's got the B gap. He's going to take the A gap. You got a wide end here because of where they're at. He's going to be a B gap player. He's a C gap player. Again, he's a C gap player, and you got a linebacker outside or a linebacker out here that is the edge player. And then you see Fish, who is the quarterback of the defense. He's the one that leads the charge with everything. Now, a lot of times over the last year, Indiana did a great job of getting their safeties into the run game by bringing them down into the box to get that extra man at the point of attack, and it paid quite big dividends with them when you talk about that. But their defense, what did it do? Stupid thing. We'll just leave it like that then, so we don't have to worry about that. When you look at it again, they did a great job of when the ball is snapped of movement. And these guys up front never stood still. So in this instance, you got Tucker he's going to come into the A gap. Okay. You got this guy coming in. They're bringing the will off the edge because this is out of the 3 backer set. You got guys moving and putting themselves into position, and he's going to scrape over the top and have that B gap. And that's what they did very well. When they moved, very seldom did they leave themselves exposed to not having a gap covered. And here's an example of it right here. And Indiana will definitely miss Daly. And this is a great play by him as he's able to wrong arm it, take another guy, and then there's Fish coming in that other gap and putting himself to make a play. And another great job with getting a lot of guys around the ball when they attack people. So that was one thing that I thought they did a great job of last year when they talks about, let's go to this one here again against Iowa and talk about their structure in this respect. Again, four man down. Usually they like to run this under front, or what we take the one technique towards the boundary. In this case, motion does not affect them. I mean, they're not doing a lot of different things when a defense motions. It's very, very minimal in what they do. They're recognizing it. It's a very basic too high safety look. Corners are sitting in a soft position. Again, they're bringing the will to the outside, but as you can see, when the ball snaps, they're moving into their respective gaps and they're not allowing themselves to be blocked. But their integrity of their defense of being gap sound starts it all at first. And here's a really good picture, and even sometimes better than the last one. As you can see here, you got an A gap player, B gap, or C gap, B gap. There's a C. You got Jones out here for the outside gap. Hardy right here. He can cover the A gap or the B gap, depending on what the 3 technique does. Because if he comes in, if he comes inside, then he automatically will scrape there. So there's a lot of ways to do this, but right now at the snap before the snap of the ball, they're all in great unison as it pertains to their restructures and stuff. And you can see right now that after the snap of the ball, they're moving again. The backers are trying to get over the top. Wyatt does a great job here because this is a guy with the quarterback under center. The first thing that this guy has is that he has boot. So if this quarterback comes back here and boots out of it, that's him. So what you're going to see him do is you're going to see him get to the depth of the quarterback, make sure the ball's handed off, and then he will, what we call, trace back towards the line of scrimmage. So that's his first responsibility as that defensive end. And you can see him here. He's making sure with it. And you can see the corners and safeties starting to get into the picture here. But as soon as he sees it, he traces back and gets in on the tackle because the first thing that he did was play his play. He did what he was supposed to do in that respect. And that was, whoops, sorry about that. Was able to put himself in a position that he was able to get himself right by making sure that he did not have boot on that sense. So there's the first thing about this defense that they did as good as anybody. They were always well versed in their fundamentals, first of all, but they were well versed in the scheme that they were running. They were well versed in understanding what the responsibilities were and how to get to the point of attack very quickly. And you saw very little what I would call thinking too much, because these guys would move very quickly in their scheme. But that is one reason why they were so good against the run, and they put themselves in a position to make the play. And when they did make the play, you would notice that they would get a lot of guys to the point of attack after that because of what they did as a defense. But again, that was a key component of this defense, and what they were able to accomplish this year was that they were able to get themselves aligned correctly, and that's where Aiden Fisher was worth his weight in gold. He was the guy that called the defenses on the field, and Bryant style defensively was not giving them a lot of different rules other than understanding their gap responsibility and where they needed to be after the ball was snapped. They gave the guys a lot of freedom in some respects to when they, how they moved or moved their fronts and things like that. And that gives the guys buy-in, because if you're giving them a chance to be involved in the defense more than just playing a position and putting responsibility on your linebacker to make sure guys are lined up, and giving the responsibility to even the defensive linemen to do some things, as long as they understand where their gap is after the ball is snapped, that's all you can ask for. And then they got to go make the play. Defense is, and when you think about a defense, it's about that. It's about being gap sound in what you do. And another thing you'll hear coaches talk about is leverage in the football. And basically that means keeping the ball or the runner on your inside shoulder when it comes to that, and that's in that aspect. But again, that is one of the things that I thought they did quite well last season and they've done it a lot more than just last season, but over the last 2 seasons. Now, you remember the comment that Alabama's quarterback made about talking about Indiana's defense was oversimplistic or wasn't, I can't remember the exact words. It kind of came out as a slight against Indiana's defense. The reality of it is, what he was trying to say is Indiana's defense doesn't show a lot of junk. They are kind of, I'm going to line up and whip your ass at the point of attack mentality. And that's what they do. And even in the secondary, they don't have a lot of different coverages in terms of just, this or that. We'll talk about that here in a second. But Indiana, it's about how they do it as much as anything. It doesn't matter if you're the best DC coordinator in the country that has all these tricks and gimmicks. That doesn't win you football games. What wins you football games is not making mistakes as a defensive unit. And that's why Indiana they always seem to be in position. And that's one big trait of why they're one of the best, aspects of that when it comes to defending run games and stuff. Now, here's a couple plays again, too, just gonna, I guess you could say, label them here. This is an inside zone play against Old Dominion. Again, you're going to see a lot of things, Old Dominion putting the formation of the boundary. They used really wide splits because they were trying to open these lanes and put a lot of stress on these guys in that respect. In this game, Indiana ran what I call a bear front. And that just means that the guard, center, and guard are all covered by Indiana's defense. These two guys on the outside are basically outside leverage guys. And then you can see the coverage in behind here, which is probably going to be some type of 3 deep when it's all said and done. Now, this is, again, another way that they like to do things is, again, they don't like to just play standstill football. They're going to move it quite a bit. Now, what I say is watch what happens here. They did this a lot with Farrell and, oh, shoot. Can't think of the other safety's name, where they would get them active in the run game and get them in the box, filling for a linebacker that blitzed. And there's an example of it right there. And Indiana, again, because they got guys to the ball, they were able to tackle as a unit. Okay, this is what I mean by bear. You got a guy covered there, a head up, and a guy covered there, Mike linebacker, and the 2 guys are not in the picture because Old Dominion spread them out. And when you spread them out, that's where you get this situation where you're not going to get those guys in the picture. Now, on this play, they're going to move him there, and then they're going to scrape Fish into that A-gap strong. And again, that is technically where he would be. Now, they all know that before the snap of the ball. But again, you get guys taking on double teams. You get your nose one-on-one. And there's Fish getting tackled by the center. Here is Moore coming down into the box as that extra run guy. And he puts him in a position with Farrell to go make the play in space. So again, you get a chance to see that perspective with this defense utilizing their skill and speed with their guys up front. Now, here's another one where you see, Lewis Moore. Thank you. I was spacing him for some reason. Here's another bear front, a little better picture because Iowa's more in a tight end oriented scheme of things. And you can see that 3 down linemen, 2 outside guys, 2 inside backers, Hardy and Fish. This is Boykin out here, Wyatt at the top, and then, of course, the secondary over the top. So now this one, again, is that inside zone play. They're going to run a little motion. Not a lot. Not a lot is changing that. But when you see the snap of the ball again, they're moving it. Hardy this time. Boykin again, he has quarterback. His responsibility as a quarterback reading on this. So if this quarterback would pull it and run, he would be the guy responsible for the quarterback. And again, they're in a position where they're able to make the tackle maybe after a few yard gain, but they were really good at it. And they didn't give up a ton of big plays in the run game. There were a couple, mostly out of quarterback runs, and Old Dominion was one of them. But again, you're going to see these guys, they're going to move. Hardy's going to be here, and they're going to scrape to the ball. You'll see what I mean here in a second. They do a great job of this. Remember, Boykin's got the quarterback, so he knows his responsibility. And you can kind of see right now, Indiana's occupied every D lineman or offensive lineman. Here's Moore coming down in the box, and Aiden getting ready to scrape over the top. Boykin checking to make sure the ball's given. Once that's read, he gets back to it, and then there's Fish in a position right in his gap, the A gap, to go make the play as the guard did not make the block there. He was able to get off and not let that guy block him. So again, like I said, why was Indiana successful defensively? One of the biggest reasons was and I'm going to say this and not in a way to be overly childish in this regard, but they were simplistic in the sense that their guys understood their alignments. They understood the technique that they were utilizing. And then when they moved their fronts, the guys knew what they were to do and their responsibility. And you could see why they were good at what they did. And a lot of teams say that Indiana will not overly flash you, but what they do everything so good, especially defensively, that allows their defense to play fast. And that is the one thing that you would say about Indiana's defense. They play fast because they're not thinking with a bunch of stuff. They're getting themselves a chance to go play. And that's what Bryant and their staff does a great job of. They make sure they understand the concept and the philosophy behind the defensive call. They trust their linebackers to make any checks that are needed, but they want them playing fast. And that's one thing this defense did quite well. And when it came to stopping the run, that was a big reason. Their alignments, their movement, and playing fast and getting a number of hats to the ball when they needed to get guys at the point of attack. We're going to take a quick break here, talk about the Hoosier.com and, of course, the Fanatics storefront for game day's essentials, as well as the shop for the national championship. When we come back, we'll talk about some other things they did to mess up quarterbacks and the passing game that led to the big mistakes. We'll be back with more Hoosier Tailgate Live right after these messages.
Hoosier fans, if you want the best coverage of Indiana football, basketball, recruiting, and the Big Ten, there's only one place to be. Join thehoosier.com, powered by On3. Get insider recruiting intel, team news, transfer portal updates, premium analysis, and exclusive coverage from the staff that covers Indiana athletics every single day. Right now, new subscribers can get 50% off their first year. And after that, it's just $119.99 per year. Don't miss breaking news, VIP content, and championship-level coverage. Visit thehoosier.com today and stay ahead of the game. Thehoosier.com, your home for Indiana Hoosiers coverage. Indiana football fans, get your officially licensed Indiana gear today at the Hoosier Tailgate Fanatics storefront. Jerseys, hoodies, hats, collectibles, tailgate gear, and championship apparel, all in one place. Look for the link in the description to the Hoosier Tailgate storefront and gear up today.
Welcome back to Hoosier Tailgate Live here on thehoosier.com. Appreciate you joining us this evening. I put that Game Day Essentials storefront in the chat if you want it, as well as in the description. And like I said, everything that is made via the stores or any affiliate link, we do earn a little bit of commission, and whatever's earned, we put back into the show. So much appreciated if you get a chance to get in there and buy some of the game day gear that's there that is picked out for you there at the Fanatic store. And they run different specials that change quite frequently, but sometimes free shipping, 20 to 30% off and stuff. But take a look at it and see if there's something there you like. Now, recapping there, that first part with the run defense, the running game and the base alignment for Indiana. They played a lot of four-man front, what we call under or over, and that's just the alignment of the one technique as it pertains to the tight end and things like that. And they played a lot of bear front against teams. And to sit here and say that I know the reasons why they played this or that, I'm not going to say I absolutely, without a doubt, know it, because the only people that know that are Bryant and his staff. But that changes by game plan. It could be a yearly thing because of what they think or what they're trying to accomplish. Maybe they're trying to get more one-on-one scenarios by going to the bear front. Bear front has a tendency to change assignments in your blocking game. Everything, for the most part, is set up for what we call an even defense or an odd defense when you run things. So inside zone, you block it with, there's a way you block it with a four-man front. There's a way you block it with what we call a odd front or a three-man front. And then you have the specialty defense, a bear front, that really changes some things. And that's what we'll get into as well when it comes to the passing game and such like that. But again, the other thing that Bryant did with this defense, and they did it as good as anything, is what I call the art of confusion. And what I mean by that is they would do a lot of simulated pressure stuff where what I term as guys creepers in that respect, where guys are kind of creeping up into the line of scrimmage, or we call a mud set where you got guys already aligned on the ball. And the other thing they did quite well is coverage disguise. They would line up and maybe show a two shell, and at the snap of the ball, you think it's a two-man or a cover two with rolled up corners, and at the snap of the ball, they're bailing and rotating a guy to the safety, free safety, bringing a safety down, and they're playing a true cover three, or they're going to some type of man free. What they're doing there is trying to give a pitcher pre-snap to the quarterback and make him react after the snap. And if they can get a quarterback to hesitate just a second, that is what can lead to some huge turnovers. And here's one of them against, we're going to show now, against UCLA last year. I think this was the first play of the game, if I'm not mistaken. Here, Indiana is aligned in I call it an over, this one's an over front, I think. And we're going to watch it here and what happens. But again, you can see how they're aligned in this. They've got a two high safety. They're going to bring the will backer in right over the center. and they're running inside zone to the field, but this ends up being an RPO. Again, he has got the quarterback and he's playing it that way. He's quickly up the field. You got Fish right here who's getting ready to scrape over the top because he's ultimately got the B gap. Hardy's taking the A gap, and then you see where Lewis Moore's coming down and he's got this B gap here. So that's getting that extra body at the point of attack, and you're getting to see these guys rotate and bail, going from a 2 high to a cover 3 look or a 1 high look. So after that, again, because of Daly and how fast he was, you get him in a situation where this quarterback has no business throwing the ball here. He's guessing on this one. This ball should have been a handoff, but he makes the mistake and pulls it because he thinks that he's going to have a gimme ball. Daly blows it up, and then Fish, because he's in the right position that he's supposed to be in, he steps right in the lane of the throw, and it ends up being a pick 6 for a touchdown. And that is a prime example right there, showing a pitcher, but after the snap of the ball, it changing on the quarterback, also the front and the coverage in that respect. So that's a huge one there that Indiana was able to do with that concept to it. Let's see here. Here's not that one. Here's one against Alabama. Again, 3rd down and long. Indiana has a 3rd down. They're going to play their 4-man front. Now they got guys outside because of what Alabama's in. And what they're going to end up doing is, you can see Aiden, he's given the signals and everything. Hardy's over here on the outside. So he's outside here. This is Boykin creeping, and you got the safety coming down as well on 3rd and 14. So what it looks like is they're bringing it. Nope, they're bailing. So you get what I call a bluff. Now they bring it with one guy, but you watch, these 2 guys are going to bail out of it at the snap of the ball. Lewis Moore's even going to back up, and he's kind of playing the kind of a deep cover Tampa 2 type of concept, but this really turns to like a really soft cover 2. And then you got everybody in position, making the coverage. The defensive end is becoming the flat player, replacing Hardy, who's on a blitz, which causes the tackle to make a mistake. And he almost gets to him. The problem that he made there is he didn't stay on his upfield, this shoulder in the behind there, because he gets inside of it, and that's where Bama's quarterback turns out of it and gets him. So he's out on the outside. So now they're having to adjust to it. But because Lewis Moore does his job, they get pressure on the quarterback. He thinks he sees blitz. They bail to zone. He completely loses sight of Moore, and Moore's in the position to go make the play and does a great job of knocking that out of the hands of the defensive player there. Here's another one in a short yardage situation. They're going to zone blitz. They're kind of up tight at the line of scrimmage. And it's Kamara who's bailing out of this one, and they're not bringing anybody. They're playing coverage here. And they were able to get to the sack because they were able to confuse the quarterback just a second there to make the hesitation before he threw the football. Let's get one more here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the pressure stuff. Okay, here's a big play. This is 3rd down. Now, when you look at the structure here, this is just a 4-man front, but what they end up doing here, and I'll show you from behind, they walk up the linebacker, which I think is Jones in this case. It may be Aiden. and he's going to play like the 3 technique right over him. So they end up walking up into a bear front. So they show a 4-man front, and then all of a sudden they walk into a bear front. So now that's another reason. Over on the outside here, you got 4 safeties across the board. They're going to show a man coverage look, and they bail at the snap to a cover 3. And they were able to get pressure by bringing the total of 4 guys. And again, putting the offense at a disadvantage. Okay, here's what I was saying. They're in a 4-man front. They've got him pre-aligned in a 0. He's in a 3, 5, 5. You got Boykin out here off the edge. And then here's Aiden walking up. So that turns into what I call a bear front, because all 3 of the interior guys, guard, center, guard, are covered. That changes protections because they go from a 4-man now to a bear front. It can cause confusion. And there you go. You got Kamara coming off the edge, the tackle. He's not sure what he's supposed to do here, because he's kind of on an island. As you see there, he's like, who do I take? Well, I don't know. Better take one of them. And they ultimately make a mistake. And again, we get the big play of forcing another 4th down situation. Now here's 3rd and 11. They go to a tight front. Again, Indiana jumps in their bear package. Nothing overly fancy in that look. Again, they're going to zone pressure it, and they're going to rush 4. They got a little twist. They're getting pressure. Jones is just a second from being late, and I think this was 2nd and long. They make them drop down, and Indiana's going to a Tampa 2. As you see, Lewis Moore become what I call a rob safety, but he's right here in the middle watching for crossers and stuff to put themselves in a position to get picks and stuff. And it forces the quarterback to load it and drop it off up front. So as you can see on those 2 examples right there, they put themselves in a position that led them to disguising it just enough to hesitate the front or the offensive lineman and also in that case the quarterback, and they forced him to drop it down to the check down for a 5-yard gain on 2nd and I think it was 11 or 14 in that case. So again, another win for the defense. Here's another one. This time it's 3rd and 11. Ball's at the 33-yard line. Indiana comes out. Now they're in a 4-man front again with what they've got here. Hardy's come out here on the edge lineman of the scrimmage, so that's kind of a blitz look. Again, the corners are level. Safeties are about level, so we don't know what's going to happen here. Okay, they're going to bring Fish. He times it up well, and they're Hardy off the edge. And they're popping out Kamara to replace the linebacker, also the defensive end. So they bring Fisher, they bring Hardy. Now, when they did that, they brought 2 backers, so they're going to pop their D lineman out to replace those guys, like being 2 linebackers in a hook curl type relationship. And they're playing a kind of a cover 3 man free type of coverage this time. And again, they get to the quarterback, he gets it off, but nothing there. Again, good read here by Kamara, good read by the other defensive line, and they're playing to the whistle, and they get a big loss on 3rd down that ultimately, I think that took them out of field goal range in this game. if memory serves me correct. So you got that one. But again, 4-man front, they're going to bring, he's going to come here, he's going to come there. These guys are going to rush their lanes. They're going to step and bail. He's going to step and bail. And it's going to confuse Dante because he's not sure where he's going and he's getting the pressure on him. And he has to underhand toss it to his running back. But Tucker and the rest of them are right there to make the play. And it's a no good for them in that respect when it comes to trying to convert a 3rd and long and everything. So again, when you look at this defense, and again, why I said, the Bryant Haines effect is how they ran it, how they did it. They didn't have a lot of complicated fronts. They had 2, essentially, a 4-man and a bear front, but they did a great job of being able to call it and line up in it, or show you something on one end, but change on the back end, not just with their safeties, but the linebackers dropping guys out on the zone blitz concepts, doing simulated pressures. I showed you a couple there. Whatever it is, they did a great job all year long of doing that. And you saw this defense fly around and play fast. That's the one thing that I noticed about them. They may not have been great team speed overall, but because of what they did defensively, it allowed them to play fast in their scheme and had a lot of success with the experience they had in the back end and what they had up front. Now, Indiana front 4 this year, they're going to be loaded. They're going to have about 8 deep on the defensive line. You got Jones and Hardy back at linebacker. Jones, I think, will take over for Aiden as the quarterback on the field. And Jonesy, pretty intelligent guy, and he was a big factor in a lot of things that they did last year. He had a lot of big sacks and things like that. So he now is going to take over for Aiden being the quarterback. The secondary, you lose D'Angelo, but you got a lot of guys back, but look for them to continue to do what they do as a defense because they're great teachers of the scheme. They get the kids all on the same page. They give them some responsibility as it pertains to doing things, movements and such. But ultimately, Bryant's going to try to put them in the best position to be able to make plays and gain turnovers and get stops. And they did it as good as anybody last year. Again, they had great success on the 1st and 2nd down, where not many teams averaged very good, and they were faced with 3rd and longs, which is 3rd and 7 or better. And their defense was able to get off the field. I mean, it was shown in their 3rd down conversions, and then 30 turnovers as a defense a year ago. Just amazing on what they did. And I don't look for it to change. I know there was a question here earlier, and I want to get back to it because I didn't see it. I think it was from David. Do I think Coach Haines has his own program next year? Nebraska may be looking for a coach. Well, I don't think Bryant at this point in time is looking to be a head coach. That doesn't mean he won't listen, or he may be, come to the conclusion a year from now that he's ready to go make that next transition in his college football career. He likes being a defensive coordinator. He loves Cignetti and being with him. So it would ultimately have to be a great opportunity for him to leave Indiana, or more importantly, Coach Cignetti. But do I think he's ready to be a head coach? Oh, yeah. I think he's ready, and I think he'll do a great job when that opportunity comes, if he so chooses to do that. Going from being a coordinator is one thing to being a head coach. They're night and day. But I do think he'll be able to handle that transition quite well. But again, Indiana's got 2 of the best young coordinators in college football. Shanahan on offense, Haines on defense. And the other thing is their assistant coaches around them are pretty darn good too. And that's why Indiana under Sig has had great success, because of the structure that they employ with a team, as offense, as defense, and the ability of their kids to be put in positions to make plays. And they do that very, very well. That enables their kids to play fast. Next Thursday, we're going to conclude part 2 of this series, where I'm going to do my best to show what I would do against Bryant Haines, and come up as an offensive coordinator and looking at Indiana. We'll come up with that. That will finish our season 3 as we head into the month of July here shortly to start on the 2026 football season, season 4 for the Hoosier Tailgate live, all right here on thehoosier.com. For now, I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith. We'll see you next week, 7:30 p.m. for part 2 of Indiana's defense, all right here on the Hoosier Tailgate on thehoosier.com. Good night, everybody.